Alrighty, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys for a quick little update on the latest with Hurricane Idalia. Hurricane Idalia has kind of gradually intensified during the overnight hours and throughout much of the day today. Last update about 5 o'clock Eastern time had winds of about 100 miles an hour sustained winds right now, gusting even a little bit higher than that. Idalia is moving to the north at about 16 miles an hour. You can see it there on the satellite imagery below me. It's continuing to kind of get better organized. We can kind of see the eye beginning to appear on the infrared satellite imagery. That eye appears to still be somewhat a little bit cloud covered, but it actually does show up pretty well on the radar imagery. So with that in mind, as we go our way through the evening, we're going to be watching as Idalia gradually works its way closer to Florida. As we go into early tomorrow morning, it'll likely be making a landfall somewhere around the northwestern portion there of Florida. Hurricane warnings are actually in effect along parts of the northwestern Florida coastline, as well as storm surge warnings, as some places could be seeing storm surges over 12 feet. And that's going to be from about the Alachua River all the way down towards about Yankeetown. About 10 to 15-foot storm surge could be or is expected to be in that area. Again, for those of you who might not know what storm surge is, that's basically when the winds push that water a little bit inland there, kind of leading to some localized areas of flooding. I guess when I say localized, I mean, not all the way across the state of Florida, but at least that storm surge, again, is kind of that inland flooding that you see for maybe about a mile or so going inland. Some places even a little bit more than that. Now, with that in mind, talking about Idalia itself here, we are now able to see it on the radar imagery. And while it doesn't necessarily look all that impressive, keep in mind that the radar can only extend so far out, and likely we're not really getting much, radar coverage from the western portion here, as that is further out from where the radar is located in Tampa. But we are able to see the eye wall here of Idalia. Now, you've heard me talk about it before. The eye wall is where the strongest winds are located. So if we were to go ahead and kind of stop this radar imagery, there is the eye right there. Again, it is looks mainly rain-free at this time, but again, there's still maybe at least some cloud cover associated with it. But this ring you see right here, that is the eye wall of Idalia, and that's where those 100-mile-an-hour winds are going to be located in. So again, not the whole hurricane, but as this hurricane does get stronger, it is expected to intensify a little bit more as we head through the evening and overnight tonight. Obviously, those hurricane force winds will extend a bit further out from the center, but again, the strongest winds of a hurricane tend to be right around this area in what is known as the eye wall. Now, we're already starting to see some of the outer bands associated with Idalia beginning to work its way to parts of the Florida coast, but for right now, most of that rain, at least as of about 7 o'clock at the time of this recording, most of the rain is still a little offshore. So as we go into the overnight tonight, Idalia is going to be tracking her way to kind of the northeast eventually. Let's go ahead and kind of put the track back on here. We'll flip over the cone so you can kind of at least see where the center is expected to be. And again, the center is mainly going to be staying offshore as we go through the overnight tonight. But again, we can see that some of the rain, good majority of the rain extends well beyond that cone there. Again, keep in mind the cone is just where the center is expected to be. We will be seeing tropical storm force winds well out from the center. As a matter of fact, it's likely that we're already kind of starting to see some of the tropical storm force winds beginning to move closer to the onshore parts of the southwestern coast here of Florida, and then eventually it'll kind of work its way into Tampa Bay. Now, when I talk about the wind fields here, we'll flip it on here. Keep in mind that the wind field, at least as of this estimate, is running a little bit behind where the actual center is. So this is the hurricane force winds right there in that orange color. Again, you can see not a very large area, where those hurricane force winds are. And again, this was from about 2 hours ago, so the hurricane is now up here. So just kind of shift this with your eyes a little bit, this wind field map a little bit north to where that orange circle is pretty much right there where the center of Idalia is at this time. So those tropical storm force winds not too far off the Florida coast as we go into the overnight tonight, and Idalia kind of begins to turn a bit more to the north and to the east. Obviously, some of those tropical storm force winds will make their way a little bit inland, but you can see that Idalia is going to be kind of parallel here with the Florida coast as we go through this evening and overnight. keeping the strongest of the winds, at least for the next, for the rest of the evening, still offshore. But as Idalia does begin to turn more northeaster as we go towards northeasterly, excuse me, as we go towards tomorrow morning, again, now strong winds will begin to work their way inland there. So right now, the Hurricane Center is expecting Idalia could reach up to about 115-mile-an-hour winds. Obviously, it could maybe intensify a little bit more before it does make its landfall. And that landfall is likely going to be sometime as we go into tomorrow morning. Obviously, heavy rain and windy conditions will precede it. We do actually have a buoy that is likely going to be in the path here of Idalia. And this is what it looks like there right now. This is buoy 42036 hanging out in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. The winds there right now gusting to about 35 miles an hour. Waves are at about 7.5 to 8 feet. So as this hurricane, as Idalia moves closer to it, as we go through the evening, we'll watch as these conditions, especially at this buoy, kind of begin to, well, obviously the winds will increase and so too will the waves. So this will be pretty interesting to watch. Unfortunately, because it'll be nighttime, we're probably not going to see much in the way of the picture. But if what you see there are some of those white caps already, some of the darker scans, you can kind of see those waves in the distance there. Gives you a little indication of what you'll be, what it'll probably look like there as we go through the overnight hours. So again, that's just one buoy that is going to be, again, as mentioned, pretty much almost right in the direct path as we go into the overnight hours. Obviously, some places along the Florida coastline. We'll also have some video that we'll take a look at, especially as we go into tomorrow morning. So we'll keep you updated as we go throughout the overnight tonight. Again, Idalia going to make a landfall right now, expected to be a Category 3. Not unusual for Florida. They're used to that. They've had stronger landfalls before, but still, nonetheless, especially when you're dealing with Category 3 and above, 115 mile an hour winds certainly will be producing, a good amount of storm surge along parts of the Florida coastline, especially where those hurricane warnings are in effect, as well as, the typical beach erosion and some other factors there. So power outages, obviously some structural damages, especially once you get close to the shore, where the storm surge is not only going to be, it'll be dealing with storm surge, and then it'll also be dealing with the winds coming straight off the ocean. So, that's where the strongest of the impacts are going to be. As next, remember, as mentioned, that's going to be tomorrow morning. Now, as I mentioned, the hurricane conditions, well, when Idalia makes its landfall, it will begin to weaken, as all tropical systems do once they hit land. But right now, it's expected that at least some hurricane conditions will probably, make their way well inland. But you can see by this red color here, those are hurricane warnings. So even though Idalia is going to be weakening as it makes its landfall, those hurricane force winds could still make their way a little bit inland. Places like Palm Coast, Orlando, likely not going to be seeing hurricane force winds. They'll be seeing, tropical storm force winds, which, will probably be, on the order of 50 to 60 mile an hour winds in places like Orlando. And most of that will probably be wind gusts. And then obviously places southwest of Panama City heading into southern Georgia, all the way to Savannah, also going to be seeing tropical storm conditions. So again, as we mentioned earlier on these, many of these chats here that I have done for you guys, I've shown you the Saffir-Simpson scale and what we mean by tropical storm force. Here it is one more time in case you haven't seen it before. Tropical depression right down here, if I can point to it. There you go. Tropical depression right there is the lowest. It's the weakest of all the tropical systems. Tropical storm is next, and that's 39 to 73 mile an hour winds. That's when the system will also get its name. If it drops below that, again, it'll still retain the name. It has to make it the tropical storm at least at some point in its life to get a name. And then once you get to 74 miles an hour or greater, that becomes a hurricane. And then hurricanes are divided into 5 categories: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the strongest. It does not have an upper bound of wind speeds, but the lower bound is 157 miles an hour, greater than or equal to. So not expecting Idalia to be a Category 5. It's likely going to be in the Category 3 range with winds about 115 miles an hour. So it kind of puts it almost middle and slightly below middle of Category 3. But you get the idea. Still a major hurricane nonetheless, but it will be weakening down to tropical storm status by the time it gets to Charleston, South Carolina. And when it does get to Charleston, South Carolina, at least when the center of it passes over, it'll be tomorrow night, probably around 2 a.m. or so, maybe 6 60-mile-an-hour winds. So going to be kind of an active overnight tonight and going into tomorrow morning. Like I said, I'll keep you guys updated here. We'll keep an eye on some video feeds here and there, and again, we'll keep checking on that buoy out there. It's going to get rocked pretty well. Category 3 hurricane, that's going to move that thing around. Kind of makes you wonder what it'd be like to be on that buoy tonight. But with that in mind, I'll keep an eye on all that, and we'll keep you guys updated. So make sure you stay tuned here to Facebook as well as awsc.live. That takes you to the YouTube page. Make sure you like that too. We'll be posting those videos actually on there. So if you want to see them first, that's where they'll be. And then we'll probably share them over to the Facebook pages at times. And we'll probably also maybe try doing a couple of live streams later on tonight and also tomorrow morning. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you tune in for that. So I hope you all stick around. It should be pretty interesting next 24 hours or so. And I hope you all have a good rest of your evening. We'll see you back here for some more updates in a little bit.